Hey guys, we are live. It is 2 p.m. Eastern. I got Dan on the line. Say hello, Dan.
Hi, everyone.
So we're going to get started in about 2 to 3 minutes. I usually like to start a few minutes after the hour to allow for some latecomers. I see the attendee list refreshing momentarily, so I'm just going to wait for more people to join. Usually during this time of the webinar, I just check the audio as well as the screen share. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, and then you guys have a Q&A panel. It's a tile that is somewhere on your screen. It should be visible. Sometimes those tiles get hidden. I'm going to share that screen, and do me a favor, just type in the Q&A panel that you can hear me and you can see the screen, and that'll give me the comfort that I know that at least our equipment is working, and then we can start the presentation in a few minutes. So I have an audience view on another monitor, and I can see what you're seeing, but again, it's just to make sure that gives me the warm and fuzzies to know you can see it. So if you have that Q&A panel, just type in there. The audio, I'm using my phone this time. Our voice over IP wasn't working correctly for Dan and I, so we had to resort to cell phones and headsets, so hopefully it'll come in as clear as possible. I'll try to speak as loud and clear. I see people responding. Thank you very much. And we're going to get started in a few minutes. While we're waiting to get started, I'm going to push a poll question to you guys. Now, when I push the poll question, it should technically pop up in front of you. If it doesn't, move your windows around or the tiles around, because sometimes it gets hidden behind one of the tiles, behind the media player tile. So you should see a question, what is your role? And you can answer that particular question for me. And then it'll give us a good indication of the mix of the audience. There's no prizes. There's no wrong or right answers. And we'll look at the results a little bit later. I actually got a couple of poll questions for you that we're going to ask. I'm also dealing with a slight cough, so apologize in advance if that interrupts. Dan is the star of the show today, though. So I'm just going to kick it off, do some housekeeping items, let you know about a couple more sessions in the previous session, a couple of promos, and then Dan is taking over from here. So. Okay, we're going to give about 1 more minute, wait for the attendee list to finish refreshing. Okay, it's 2:04. We're going to get started. Let me just put this into presentation mode for you all. And we'll just have other people will continue to join us in a moment. Perfect. Okay, hey guys, my name is Mike Tarallo. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager with Qlik, as well as a moderator and administrator for the Qlik Sense Community Forums. Welcome to session number 9 of the Do More with Qlik series. Little subtitle for beginners and beyond. If you have not signed up for this, we are still running a 50% off promo on our virtual public-led instructor training. So in the resources box that you have available within your presentation view, you should see a link with a promo code. If you click that link, it'll take you to the training search page where you can browse a catalog of different courses. This offer is available for a limited time, so take advantage of this while you can to help improve on your Qlik education. And then also, if you are new to Qlik, we are offering free workshops, basically to show you how to build your first Qlik Sense app. It's about 3 hours or so. It's hands-on. They're handled weekly in different time zones. So the link is also available on the resource list. Space is limited to these, so register as soon as possible so you can secure your spot. This is some of the cross-promotion items our education department has asked me to share with you, so take advantage of that. Okay, on the last session of Do More with Qlik, we covered Qlik's augmented intelligence capabilities, covering Insight Advisor. Okay, and this included Insight Advisor chat, chart suggestions, visual-based search, and how we can make Insight Advisor smarter by using the new business logic feature, which I'm also going to be covering in a future Do More with Qlik session entirely just on business logic, because we're adding some more features within the next release coming up probably within the next week or so. So if you missed this session or a previous session, you can always view the Do More session archive, and that's available in the link in your resource menu as well. So on today's session, it's me great pleasure to introduce Dan Pilla. I'm excited to have him here with me today. He's our Principal Analytics Platform Architect. And today, Dan is going to present and demo a brand new app for Qlik Sense software as a service deployments or SaaS deployments that we are calling App Analyzer. And without stealing too much of Dan's thunder, App Analyzer provides comprehensive dashboard analytics of all the application metadata across a Qlik Sense SaaS tenant, providing developers and administrators with this complete view into the makeup and integrity of all the applications. So Dan, say a quick hello.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Dan Pilla, Principal Analytics Platform Architect with Qlik. Just a really short intro. I've been with Qlik for about 5.5 years at this point. Started off as a solution architect, moved over to the enterprise architecture team, and now I'm on the APA team. It's a pleasure meeting you all remotely.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. And as I mentioned, Dan is going to be taking over momentarily. So just before I turn it over to him, I'd like you to note that our October 22nd is our next session at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have an all-star lineup joining me, our Qlik Senior Product Marketing Manager, Nicole Tams, our Senior Director of Product Management, Vinay Kapoor. They're going to co-present with the actual star of the show and Qlik luminary, Uri Messina of eMark. Uri is going to share real-world experiences, successes, tips and tricks, as well as fears and pitfalls when working with QlikView customers to show them how they can modernize their existing QlikView deployments with Qlik Sense. So you're not going to want to miss this one, and it'll give you a chance to learn from the best and ask some very important questions to the Qlik team. So hope to see you on our next session, October 22nd. Also, a quick note about this. You noticed I have Dan with me, who's part of Qlik. Uri is going to be with me next week, including other Qlik employees. If you have a topic or a discussion point that you'd like to share with the Qlik community, just contact me, and we can have you as a special guest on these sessions. And that brings me into my last slide. To get in touch with us, that's not my last slide. This is the Q&A panel, but the email address is there, domorewithqlik@qlik.com. Basically, we're going to answer questions during the presentation or hold them toward the end. So keep that in mind. You already used some of that today. But as I was mentioning, in regards to getting in touch with us on our different social media channels, as well as our new email address, domorewithqlik@qlik.com. Don't use that for support. Use the Qlik community, please, for support, but it is there, and I'm happy to help. If you need to reach out to me for any reason, feel free to do so there as well. Okay, so I am going to now shut this down, and we're going to turn it over to Dan to learn about App Analyzer.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Let me go ahead and share out my screen.
Yep. I might interrupt you every now and then with some questions of my own.
Oh, please do.
So you're aware, Dan. Okay. And while you're getting your screen shared,
coming up momentarily.
Cool. While you're getting your screen shared, just a reminder, there are some poll questions that we will be publishing along the way. The first one should be live on your screen, hidden behind a media player, most likely, or in front, asking you what your role is. Okay, Dan.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Again, this session today is focused on the App Analyzer, which is a new application for Qlik Sense SaaS. I do want to start off before we dive straight into this application, just by giving a little bit of color on where its roots came from and why this application is the first monitoring application that's available in our SaaS platform. So ultimately, its roots come from a Windows iteration. So you might see a version, or you may have heard of this application before. It's been presented at Connections a couple of times over the last few years, called the App Metadata Analyzer. Ultimately, this is an application that was designed for Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows that is actually shipped with the product, along with the reloads monitor, session monitor. It's actually buried in the installer, so you would have to manually import it and set it up. It's hinged off of the same endpoint that is available within our SaaS platform. And what that metadata endpoint actually houses, and you can check on both your Windows server or your SaaS server, you can go to any URL and you can just modify the end of that URL to be API v1 apps. You would then put in your application GUID, and then you would append data metadata. So there's that format of the URL that's defined on the help page, and you'll ultimately see something that looks like this inside of it. So every single application, whether it's on a Windows platform or it's on our SaaS platform, has this same metadata that's attached to that QBF file. And what that metadata provides is it provides some details about the resting RAM footprint of that application, the amount of memory that it took to reload, so the peak reload RAM. And then we have actual metadata, some system fields that I'm going to scroll past pretty quickly, and then all of the individual fields within the application and how much RAM they take, their cardinality, and so on and so forth. So regardless of what platform you're on, this metadata endpoint exists. A very similar application is available for the Windows product, and we've now done a spin-off application for the SaaS platform that is not shipped with the tenant. So you do actually have to go out to Qlik Community. We will always have the most recent application that is posted here, published for you to go and consume. There is a full demo video here, similar to the demo that I will give momentarily. And you can find both the installation guide, there's a PDF from Qlik Support, as well as, again, like I said, the most recent version of that app analyzer. So that is the reason that it is the first application that we have delivered to SaaS, because it was hands down the simplest application to port, because its primary data model was something that is something that's the same across both platforms. We do absolutely anticipate having additional monitoring capabilities in the future to look at user usage and auditing and so on, but those are currently roadmapped at this point in time. That being said, they are prioritized within product management and R&D. Now, if we go over to one of our internal Qlik Sense Enterprise tenants, and again, this application does work within Qlik Sense Business as well. However, just note that the demo today will be taking place inside of Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. You'll see that there's two iterations of this application, one that I have in my shared space and one that I have in my managed space. For those of you that are not maybe directly familiar with the concept of spaces within our SaaS platform, think of them as a parallel to the streams concept within Windows, though they have their differences. Shared spaces are meant for more of a collaborative environment, whereas managed spaces are treated more so as production. So I have think of it as my dev copy in my shared space and my production copy that is linked to my dev copy in my managed space. So if I wanted to look at my load script or make any changes, I would be doing it in this application. But I'm going to begin by demoing in the managed application. So I'm going to open that up. Now in this application, we have 6 sheets. We're going to step through each one and kind of go over its overall purpose and how you might use it. But we do typically follow the DAR concept, so we're going to start at a higher level and work more granular as we go across. Let's step into the dashboard. Now there's a lot on this page, so I'm going to kind of take a little bit of time and start to walk through it. On the left-hand side, all of these miniature tables, treat them as almost as filter panes, but it's a nice way to look at it. So ultimately, we're looking at, and this tenant, just as a caveat, is a little bit unique. This is an internal tenant that does not have a RAM quota, at least officially from the tenant. I'll give some color to that later. So everything is going to always have app RAM OK in this field. For some of the other thresholds, we can then see whether our peak reload RAM has been exceeded, our record count has been exceeded, and whether certain things have synthetic keys or not. There are certain thresholds that are tenant-wide, they're customer-wide, for example, the RAM quotas. And there are other thresholds that are defined by the tenant admin or the sysadmin. So they're not anything that's throttled by Qlik. They're something that an admin might want to throttle. By default, there are two static thresholds in Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. It's 5 GB resting base RAM footprint per application. So that is, if I have a 1 GB application on disk and I open that application and it expands to 4 GB in RAM without any users, any selections, that is what we are referring to as that base RAM footprint. And that is what can be found at the very top of this file right here. That static byte size, that is what's determining your resting base RAM footprint. And it's one of the most integral fields in the metadata itself. The app peak reload RAM back in the application, that is 10 GB across all of our customers. And this was a recent increase as of about a month ago. We increased that across all of our enterprise tenants. What that means is whenever I'm reloading an application, that application can take up to 10 GB in RAM before you will see a message saying that you've used up all of your allocated resources, and that application would halt reloading. So we have mechanisms to track this within this application itself. Now, depending on how complex your reload is, if you're doing tons of joins and resident loads and transformations, you might see more or less RAM consumed, and we can talk about that a little further along in the demo. But those are the two tenant-wide thresholds. You then have many other thresholds that we can set, again, for example, number of fields in a model, number of records in a model, things that Qlik by no way, shape, or form is limiting, but it might be something that a sysadmin or a tenant admin might want to consider as a best practice across the tenant. Now, some of the other tables within this application, so table memory footprint and field memory footprint, these are the two primary components that sum up to the base RAM footprint. So if I go ahead and select a single application here, this TPCH application, which is actually a very well-known data model, you can connect to any arbitrary Snowflake instance, and it's got it sitting there by default. So trying to use a standard data model to benchmark everything across. You can then see that my line item table takes 1.2 roughly gigabytes in RAM, and then my heaviest fields within that application, and we can see a pattern here that these comment fields are extraordinarily heavy. This single field takes 1.1 gigabytes in RAM. Now note that this model is pretty much every single field within every single value within the comment field is, it might be a long string of text and it's fully unique. So these are things that might not be primed to include in a Qlik Sense dashboard because they're so memory intensive. So there are, of course, optimization steps that we can do here, and we will demo that. You can see the total number of application records, and here we've got about 86 million or so. The number of records per table, so there's about 60 million in this fact table and about 15 million in the orders and 8 million in parts. And then the cardinality. So again, I have extraordinarily high cardinality at roughly 32 million in this L comment field, which is why it's taking up so much space. Now, if I go over to the next sheet, and I'm going to clear my selections here, we can see some red and a whole lot of columns. So you're seeing some of the additional columns that a system administrator might set. And we'll explore these in the load script after we demo the front end of the application. But some of those, the peak reload RAM and the base RAM footprint, those are system thresholds. But your number of table records, your number of tables, your number of fields, whether you have synthetic keys, whether you have circular references, if you have island tables, these are all system defined. So we'll show how to set these, but I, as an administrator trying to employ a best practice, might say, I don't want more than 150 fields in a data model. Because if I find that someone has 600, 700 fields in a model, odds are they might be doing select star, and they're not creating optimal applications, and they're therefore more likely to breach reload threshold or breach RAM threshold, and then cause production problems within the tenant. So they can be a really good way of getting ahead of things and flagging them nice and early, as well as there's other ways to track trends within this application as well. So we can see all of that there, again, by their space, who owns them, whether they're in personal or shared or managed. So what's their impact? Are they in a managed space that's used by many users, or are they only impacting themselves? The same thing from a table summary threshold. So you can see pretty clearly that I've got 50 million as my arbitrary threshold here. Everything under it is white. And then I've got field records and field cardinality here. And those thresholds can, again, be set in the load script. But for example, if I wanted to see any applications that might have synthetic keys, I can select has synthetic keys, and then I can drill down, and happens to be me. In this case, I've got a dummy application that has a synthetic key that I've staged. You can deselect that. If we move to the following sheet, this is a simplistic way to analyze your asset, the profile of all of your apps across an entire tenant. So again, like I said, on this tenant, it's an internal tenant. It's unlimited base RAM quota, so this top right chart hasn't rendered. For peak RAM, you can then see all of the applications and where they fit within that tenant quota. So I'm pretty good. The bulk of my applications are between 0 and 10% from their reload RAM perspective. But I've got a couple of outliers here that I might want to drill into. Now, if I sort this descending, you might see some of these that are 101%, 102%. It's roughly 10 gigabytes in RAM. It's not exactly 10 gigabytes in RAM. So keep that in mind, that it might halt you maybe a little bit over it, but ultimately it's about 10 gigabytes in RAM. So we do have one that went slightly over that before the system halted it. Now note that you can have some really large differences between your base RAM footprint and your app peak reload RAM. For example, in this incremental 5% growth, I'm doing tons of auto number and RAND calculations. It's a control 00 script for those of you that know what that is, but it's a dummy script, meaning that it takes a ton of temp RAM. So my ratio is almost, it's like roughly 9 to 1 in this case. So this would be rare. Typically, your ratio is around 2 to 1. So something like this, where you've got 5 gigabytes in base RAM footprint and it's eating up about 9 from a reload perspective, is relatively common. So we usually advocate for, expect about a 2 to 1 ratio for your reload to base RAM. If I head over to the following sheet, we can see more from a user management perspective. So I can see all of the applications that are in my managed spaces, all of the applications that are in my shared spaces or users' personal spaces. I can also then see in the top right bar chart when applications were last reloaded on the tenant. So this can be a really good way of managing garbage collection, unless you happen to be archiving a lot of applications and they haven't reloaded in a very long time. If I haven't had an application that, this app hasn't reloaded since that time frame between end of 2018 to start of 2019, that might be something that I want to look at. So it's an easy way to select these applications to potentially do some cleanup. If I go to the following sheet, this is probably the most complex sheet. I'll take some time to really talk through it. But this is where we can analyze trends. So what you might say is, okay, well, how do I know when my peak reload RAM is going to hit 10%? Or how do I have any idea of how to gauge that growth? All of the buttons on the left-hand side will change the measure for the chart, so I can decide whether I want to look at total. I want to look at growth by record count, growth by number of fields in a model, which ideally shouldn't change much. Same with total tables, or even fluctuation in reload time over time, and that's on a per app basis. So if I go ahead and look at base RAM footprint, and then let's select this 2% growth application, I can see that it's been running for a few months at this point, and it's I could extrapolate the growth at this point where I'm still at roughly 600 megabytes in RAM. I'm fine. There's no real issue here. From a peak reload RAM perspective, though, I'm really close. Actually, I'm up to just about that. Well, historically I was close at the 5 gig limit. Now that we've switched it to 10, I'm actually about halfway there. So you could then extrapolate that, in about 3-4 months, if I continue at this 2% growth, I might end up hitting, that threshold. So it allows you to get in front of it and allows you to track those metrics and spot outliers very quickly. So you can see a couple here that have actually just either we've stopped reloading or have hit a hard stop against that quota. Last sheet here, I believe, just talks about, it's just an overall about sheet. Again, it does give a friendly reminder to where that application metadata is. So you can reference this little piece of text in the bottom left that will show you the actual URL to get to the metadata if you are at all curious. So I want to take a quick, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, are you going to show us how to set it up, or is that something for another day? Oh, great.
I am. So I want to show one really quick example just to give you a business context, and then we'll jump into the load script. But if I go ahead and search for TPCH benchmark, we did a quick test just to show on this call, we being my team and I, where we loaded in that sample. This actually happened to come from Snowflake, so we pulled the entire schema itself. And if we go ahead and look at that application that I was showing, we've got these massive comment fields in it, right? And let's just say, for sake of argument, the users don't use those fields, so they're dead weight ultimately within the application, and they're going to stop this application from reloading. I'm already at my 5 gigabyte limit, and I'm nearing my peak reload RAM quota. So ultimately, if this app continues to grow at any rate, it will get shut off within the tenant, or it will just rather stop reloading. So I might want to optimize that. This same result is the result of dropping those comment fields. So we went from, let's take a look here, this is 54 fields. If I select that one, down to 46, so we dropped 8 fields. We dropped our RAM quota roughly 5x from a base RAM perspective, and we dropped our peak reload by about half, give or take. So we just provided a lot of headroom for continued growth within this application for months and potentially years to come, just by lopping off those 8 fields that business users might not even use. So I highly recommend, if you have applications that are close to some of those thresholds, to please go in and take a look at some of those heavier fields. And we encourage you to not only use this to track growth over time, but to optimize those applications. As Mike said, let's take a look at the load script though. I'm going to go back to the hub, and let's hop into the app analyzer in the shared space, so I have access to my load script. And we'll go to the data load editor. Now, if you were to just take this application and import it down, you would see something like this. You'd see tenant name and region. So it's implied that you're going to have to go in and replace that with your actual tenant name and your actual region, which could be US, EMEA, APAC, etc., depending on where you've deployed your tenant. So you would set that. You would then come down to line 26, and ultimately there's a description of how to do it directly above it. You need to make one REST connection to your tenant. Note, you do have to be a tenant admin because we are accessing every single application across the entire tenant. You also have to make sure that that user has the developer role, and all of this will be described in the PDF, so you don't have to memorize this right now. It's just more of a quick walkthrough.
Hey, Dan.
Once you create, yeah, go ahead.
Could you show them in the management console real quick? Where
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
User role and tenant is? Because I know the audience likes to see that. And because when Dan is mentioning you have to be a tenant admin, it doesn't mean that, you yourself are a tenant admin, in other words, responsible for administration as a title, is actual tag that you put in the role called tenant admin and developer. So you have access to the API keys, and that's what Dan is showing right here.
Exactly. So I have both. I'm both a tenant admin for this site. I have the developer role that has been assigned to me. I also have within my settings configuration that API keys have been enabled. And just to note, I would suggest making the token expiration a little less than, I believe this resolves to 27 years. So again, this is a demo tenant. Once you have that, you could then come in and you would create your API key by clicking on your name and then going into settings. And there is a tab for API keys within there. So that would be, and you can see actually one of these has expired. So you would come in, you would generate a new API key, and then you would leverage that API key in the REST connection that would be iterating over all of those endpoints in your tenant. So if I come back over to the data load editor here, and I go ahead and look at that REST connection, that API key is going to be set. You can only see the start of it here, so it's fine. But it's going to be set down here. And that's where you would paste it in, and then you would only ever have to touch it again once it expires. So make sure to set a calendar note or some type of notice if you know that it's going to be expiring in a reasonable amount of time.
And Dan, this is in greater detail in your demo video on the community.
Absolutely. All of this is thoroughly walked through within the PDF that is attached on community. The last thing that you don't really have to worry about is all of this application reloads incrementally. So it is very fast to begin with, but it's only going to pick up applications that have reloaded since the last reload. So if I were to run this right now and I've reloaded no applications and I immediately click load data again, it's not going to do anything. So it will reload very, very, very quickly, but you do have to create a library connection to store those QBDs. So within my monitoring apps, I can see all of my app analyzer QBDs that are automatically generated from this application. I'll just take a moment to step through the optional configuration, just really briefly, but ultimately, you've got a couple of variables here. I'm not going to walk through every single one. Just note this 90. That's the number of days that you want to store history. So right now, I'm defaulting to about 3 months. You could very easily change this to a year if you wanted to, or 180, whatever you prefer. You then have these, you see 0.8, both for app RAM to quota percent and reload peak RAM to quota percent. That's when I, as an end user, want to be alerted to an application breaching 80% of my quota in this case. So I could change this to 60% to say I want to get an ample head start. If any of my applications are even getting remotely close to that 10 gig limit or that 5 gigabyte base RAM limit, I would like to be, I'd like that to be read further along. I can also say, I'm going to let it go all the way to the end. I'm going to make this, 0.95. You can absolutely do that as well. So that's the percent of the tenant limit. All of these are those other variables that I was mentioning, like how many records you want to be allowed in an app, how many tables you want to be allowed, or how many records in a table in this case. And all of these are defined right here. So you could come in and say, I don't want more than 150 fields in an app, which is the default, or you could say, I don't want more than 100 fields in an app, and I want it to go red after that threshold. So all of these are user-defined. It's completely up to you as an organization on where you want to draw those lines. We at Qlik are not governing those at all. That would be up to you to employ as a best practice. You don't need to touch a single other section of that script. It's only this mandatory section or the optional section beneath it. So Mike, did that cover what you were hoping to cover from this section?
Absolutely. I just wanted to show them how easy it was. Probably depending on how new people are to SaaS, that is one of the poll questions that we have next. If people have explored SaaS, I'm going to push that question as well. It is fairly simple to integrate Qlik Sense SaaS with other types of applications, and that's where the Qlik API keys come in. For those of you who have attended a previous session, I covered Qlik Data Transfer, which was our data transfer client that sits on a Windows machine to take data locally from that on-premise source and bring it up into a Qlik Sense SaaS tenant. That is another way of how that application communicates with the cloud or with the cloud tenant through the API keys. So we're actually using our own technology there along with this app to do that communication to get at the RESTful endpoints to extract that data. And showing them how easy that was to do that. I mean, you couldn't get it any easier. Or maybe develop a UI or something for it, but it's fairly simple through the load script.
Absolutely. Good point. So
I did
that
push
perspective,
another poll.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. I'm just going to say I did push another poll question asking about your exploring Qlik Sense SaaS. What is your level of exploration? If you explored it, yes or no. And then the next question, if you have, is what is your familiarity with that? So take a few minutes to answer that. While Dan, I turn it back over to Dan.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. One of the next things I wanted to do, which I know some of our internal colleagues do this as well, is you'll note that I've got some charts that are sitting inside of the hub. They happen to be coming from two different applications, but what some of our colleagues will actually do, and some of our customers, they'll take this app analyzer, and they might want to have this chart sitting directly in the hub itself. So I can take that chart, I can monitor it in the hub, and I could even store the view state if I wanted to. But I could then go ahead, hit monitor that, open.
That's beautiful. So what Dan is showing here is our new chart monitoring. Exactly. That's the chart monitoring capability. That's not just part of App Analyzer. That is for any Qlik Sense app on Qlik Sense SaaS.
So now the second I come into the hub, I can immediately see, I'll immediately see if something is anywhere close to that line, or I could alternatively, I could take that rolling chart at the end, see if something is trending up, maybe faster than I expected or trending towards that line. So I can go ahead and hit View Chart, and that'll pull up the chart directly in the hub. Again, this is for any app. This isn't App Analyzer specific. And then if I know, okay, there's a problem with this incremental app, I can go ahead and open up that application. I could jump right to that chart, I believe, from there as well. But then I could drill in specifically to that app, start analyzing and saying, oh wow, it's because this individual, we've got 186 million records in this application. But I did want to show that because it's not that you have to come into the application every single time to find this data. You could very easily just put it as a monitored chart right in the hub and only go into this app as you need to.
So Dan, we have some alerting capabilities that are on the horizon, notification capabilities, and we have Qlik alerting, and I've been told that there's going to be some integration with the SaaS. Do you envision having any of that alert or notification capability built into this?
100%. We already have it built into the Windows platform with Qlik alerting. So I would highly suggest that once that capability comes out, number one, we will try and create some content around that to give you some examples of how to do that. But ultimately, for example, this app peak reload RAM exceeded along with the app RAM exceeded, to be alerted on those as a system administrator, so you can catch that at 80% and not catch that at 100 by someone complaining that an application is no longer reloading. You 100% want to get in front of that because it's going to control you want your end users to be happy overall. So that will allow you to proactively get in front of any potential data model issues.
Okay. And I have another question. If you needed to do a comparison or contrast between this and a previous application called the Governance Dashboard, which there was a Qlik Sense version, I believe, a power tool, and there was also a QlikView version, still is a few years back. How would you compare the two?
Sure. So yeah, the QlikView Governance Dashboard is still available on the download site and supported by Qlik. There was a EA power tool created by a colleague of mine roughly 3 years ago that is no longer supported. My personal opinion on that is we have found much better success by taking components of larger applications and building more targeted, specific applications that solve one problem. What was difficult with the governance dashboard was that it tried to boil the ocean. It tried to do absolutely everything, and you ended up with a highly cumbersome application that became very complex and difficult to maintain. So now we are trying to build more purpose-built applications where I can come and solve one problem, and then I might have another application that I would go and solve another problem. So this is the first one of those purpose-built applications that we've seen in SaaS so far, and I fully expect there to be more in the future.
Awesome. So guys, these are questions that I came across that I had some interest in. Now's your turn to ask any additional questions that you might have. A few came in that I just clarified with a couple individuals. So if you guys want to clarify those before I ask them, but if you have any other questions you'd like to ask, please do so now. And Dan, if you have other stuff that you'd like to show us while we're waiting for questions to come in or any type of final thoughts or wrap up, please do so.
I would just say to that note, there is I lost my tab here. Actually, I'll give a shout for that. When you do go and grab the application, if you do have feedback, please post it on Qlik Community. This is a new application, and product management and R&D would love to see that feedback. We want to make sure that it is helpful, and if there are things that you feel as if it is missing, again, within this targeted scope that the application covers, please do comment that on Qlik Community. The other thing that I was going to kind of just give a brief shout out to is the admin playbook. While this doesn't cover SaaS specifically yet, if you are a Windows customer and you Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows client and you are interested in that same capability, we do have a full walkthrough and video on the admin playbook.qlik-poc.com as well that covers exactly how the Windows version works and everything about it. So it's not that this is a SaaS only topic. We are covering a SaaS only application, but again, there is a parallel for the Windows world if this topic is still interesting to you and you are a Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows client. But Mike, that is all I had for today.
That is awesome, Dan. You did a terrific job. I hope everyone here, got the information they were looking for in regards to how App Analyzer could help them monitor their tenants. But you also see that there is an app available for a Windows enterprise system as well at that URL. What I'd like to do, Dan, is let me get that URL from the admin playbook again, because that's not one of the things I kept in the resources. Could you put that up on the screen real quick?
Yep.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that into the Q&A and present that as well. So that's Qlik POC, so it's under Docs.
Yeah, you don't have to give the fully qualified URL.
No, I got the link right here. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm putting this in as a question, and then I'm going to answer it to all as a URL, and I'm sending to all right now, and now all of you should have that URL in your Q&A inbox. Other than that, got one more question I want to push to the audience. Ask those who had answered. For example, let me just push the poll results. Poll sometimes is hidden. So we got 66.7% have explored Qlik Sense SaaS. 33.3% had said no. So for those of you who have explored SaaS, If I push that next one, the question is, if yes, rate your comfort zone with it so far. So from 1 to 5, 1 being, just tire kicking and 5 being comfortable, and anything in between, take a few seconds just to answer that for us as well. This information, usually when I do polls on the Do More with Qlik, it's kind of just to give us a little bit of information of the audience members and their comfort zones, the familiarity, and skill sets. So this information helps us along as well. So I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. And at the same time, I'd also like to thank Dan Pilla for joining us and presenting App Analyzer. And Dan, I'd love to have you on again as you continue to either improve App Analyzer with your team, or if you have other topics that you think you can share with the Do More sessions.
Absolutely. I think we're going to have more and more governance topics on SaaS as the platform continues to evolve. So I'd love to. Thank you.
That'd be great. Awesome. Okay, so guys, next session is October 22nd, learning about modernizing your QlikView deployments with Qlik Sense from real-world, in-the-trenches experience, Qlik Luminary, Uri, Messina, don't forget about that. I'll probably throw up another promo in social and have the other teams promote that as well, but you should have all the links you need to register for that one. Other than that, I don't see any questions coming in. If you have a question after we disconnect, just use that email address, domorewithqlik@qlik.com. Other than that, I'd like to bid you all farewell. Have a great rest of your week, good weekend, stay safe, stay well out there, and I hope to see you on the next session. And once again, thanks again, Dan, for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
All right, take care.
Take care.